credit to you, John, for being one of the few people outside of the market who's been paying attention to the Winnipeg Jets and noticing what our guy Kyle Connor has done. If you go to thescore.com right now under the NHL section, the piece is called In Appreciation of Kyle Connor, the NHL's perennially overlooked star. Listen, there's a lot of star power in this game tonight and in the league right now, but I have to agree. We know him very well here. He's been getting people out of their seats for years, scoring at an incredible rate. But he isn't well known around the National Hockey League, and you touched on that in your piece in The Score.
Yeah, it's really one of those things where, just to give you some background on how I approached this story, was I get these reports from Sportlogic, and they run through, cycle chances, forecheck chances, rush chances, et cetera. And he would, be sprinkled in the top 15. And I'm like, okay, Connor's having another good year. The goals haven't been up to his normal standard, but he's still producing us. And then I would look over to the primary assists, and he's tied for seventh, right now with Josh Morrissey of all people in the entire league at basically a half a primary assist a game. And I'm going, does anyone ever talk about his playmaking? I would say no. And then I go, does anyone ever talk about Kyle Connor, period, outside of Winnipeg? And the answer is basically no, right? So that just got me the wheels turning, if you will, in my head. And went down to Buffalo last week and talked to some Jets players, talked to Rick Bowness, and got a feel for, what their perspective is on Kyle Connor and why he's overlooked. Just dug into exactly what he's done. I mean, he ranks sixth amongst all NHLers since his first full season, 2017-18, in goals. That's phenomenal. I mean, who's ahead of him? Ovechkin, Matthews, McDavid, Draisaitl, Pasternak. Okay, those are absolute studs, superstars every day of the week. And then it's Connor, and then after Connor, Stamkos, McKinnon, Rantanen, Tavares, DeBrincat. So aside from DeBrincat, we can leave him out of the conversation because he's at the end. But of the other nine, Connor is kind of the odd man out as far as name recognition across the league, as far as just kind of, if you were walking down the street and asking a random fan, who's part of this top 10, I think they'd leave out Connor. And I'm not saying he should be part of this, top class of offensive stars, Matthews, McDavid, et cetera. But I think he should be in that second tier. And I feel like he's treated like he's either in the third or fourth tier.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's pushing that top tier. I mean, and you saw the goal. I mean, last year flirting with 50 goals. And this year it's been really interesting, John, in that, you said the goals weren't there. They certainly weren't at the start. He started off with only 2 goals in his first 14 games, but at the same time was still being very dangerous, was still being productive, was still helping his team win. And then it was almost like a dam. You knew it was going to break. And right now at times he is like a shark in the water where you see the blood coming. You almost know that red light is going to be turned on. And, the momentum that he and the team has had, especially going into a game tonight where people in Toronto will actually be paying attention to the Winnipeg Jets, and that includes most of the national and the hockey media. This is a huge opportunity to sort of remind people many of those numbers that you just mentioned. And of course, he's just coming off his 200th goal, which he scored against the Montreal Canadiens. So I'm not sure that this team, to call it a coming out party would maybe be a little ridiculous considering he has 200 goals. He's done all of the things. However, he, in a lot of ways, represents his team. I think a lot of people, maybe they weren't expecting this. It kind of caught them by surprise, and all of a sudden they're here.
No, I think that's actually a really good way to frame it, is Kyle Connor being the representative. And obviously there's some tremendous success stories on the Jets this year. Morrissey, as I mentioned, with the amount of points he's putting up and just being unleashed, if you will, by Rick Bowness. That's been really fun to watch. Connor Hellebuyck in the conversation for the Vezina Trophy. So even in this year where you look at Connor and go, okay, time to give this guy a little bit of a shine, there's 2 other guys that are kind of overshadowing him. And I think that's part of the reason why he hasn't, we'll say, popped across the league as far as getting that notoriety. There used to be Dustin Byfuglien, Patrick Laine, and then obviously Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers. All these guys in one way or another have distracted us from Kyle Connor. With Bufflin, it's the personality and the big hits. With Laine was a shot and the personality, and just sort of a soap opera of sorts in some ways in terms of him being injured or on or off or cold or hot. So that's, I think, affected it too. And then also Connor, there's a few things about him that I think are very unassuming. I mean, you talk to anyone that knows him on a personal level and they'll say like pretty basic guy, chill, like he's not overly serious, but he's also not overly goofy. He just kind of is there as far as, being a good guy, but not this, off the wall personality. And then also, if you see him on the ice, he kind of just blends into the action as far as his body type, right? I mean, he's not tiny, but he's not this imposing guy. And he's put on some muscle since being drafted. But if you stand next to him, he's still like, just a guy that's really in really good shape. He's not hulking. He's not imposing. So I find that might factor into it as well. And then one thing that's, I half jokingly mentioned in the story is his name. I mean, Kyle Connor. It's like a John Smith equivalent. So maybe just as something as simple as his name doesn't catch your attention in the same way as, I don't know, Kyle Matisz, just to use my name. Like people would go, oh, Matisz, I've never heard that name before. Kyle Connor, you go, oh, I know Connor McDavid, or, I know that those are both first names, but like it just doesn't register as this name that'll stick in your head.
He's not even the only Connor on his own team. I mean, we often talk about the Connor and Connor show when Hellebuck and Kyle Connor are making it happen. But well, let's just say that I guess what was it, 20 years ago or 20 odd years ago, Connor was must have been at the top of the hot names in the baby books for hockey parents, because there's a lot of them right now. And listen, some of them getting more headlines than the guy wearing 81 for Winnipeg.
Absolutely. And another thing that I tried to relay in the piece is, even though he has these flashy elements to his game, I mean, he's incredibly fast. I mean, arguably a top 10 speedster in the game, in the league. And he's got this wicked wrist shot. Like, again, another elite part of his skill set. The rest of his game is pretty subtle. So he's a really good forechecker. That's what a few people brought up to me. And it's not forechecking in the sense that he's going in there and banging and crashing. I mean, he's one of the least physical players on the Jets, but he's so fast that he wins those foot races. And then if he doesn't win the foot race, he's very good at stripping pucks and won't take penalties, right? I mean, he won the Lady Byng last year. So he's got that going on. He's got a good give and go game and a cycle game. Again, kind of boring things, especially for a guy who's not big. So I think that also factors in. And one final thing is he's not great defensively. So you're not hearing him sort of being trumpeted as a two-way guy like, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Part of the reason why he pops off the page when you watch him is the size, the strength, the attitude. And also he can play both, forward and defense at a very high rate. So it's just interesting how this sort of cornucopia of reasons lead to a guy being overlooked, even though when you go to the stats, you're like, there's no chance in hell this guy should be overlooked, especially when you look at stuff like game-winning goals. As you guys know, I mean, he broke the Jets record, set a new record for the Jets Thrashers organization. And then also he's third in game-winning goals since that first full season, 2017-18, in the entire league. So it's not just, he happens to be scoring the game-winning goals for the Jets. It's like, no, he scores a lot in general.
Yeah, he's got 8 already this season, which is just wild. And you mentioned Dubois. They are, in a lot of ways, one of the most interesting combinations. Since they've been together, there's been very few combinations of two players in the league that have been more successful. Dubois is Canadian. Connor's a Yank. Dubois is this big, bruising guy. Kyle Connor's a little smaller, certainly has all the speed, but man, together they've just been magic. And John Matisz, we will look forward to more from you, opening people's eyes on the best in the West right now. And of course, Kyle Connor over at thescore.com. This was a lot of fun. Let's do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. And yeah, you're giving me ideas. Maybe I'll do a deep dive on the Jets, the team, sometime soon, because they put together a pretty impressive first half, and it doesn't look like they're going to slow down. It looks legit. So
well, I'll look forward to that, and we've got the spot already booked for you to come back on Winnipeg Sports Talk and talk about it. Have a great one, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers, guys.